Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of PYA Crew Spotlight. My name is Ria. I am your host, and I'm really pleased to welcome back Captain Kelly Gordon. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? And thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, you know what? You've been making the media rounds lately. We've been seeing you in magazines. We've been seeing you in podcasts. We've been seeing you all over the place. You're getting pretty popular.
I know. I guess I don't know really how to respond to that. It's pretty cool. I've always said if I had the opportunity to encourage or inspire young women of any age, and anyone for that matter, to join this industry or to chase their dream of becoming a part of the deck department in this industry, and I could do it just by speaking out or talking and sharing my story, that's what I was going to do. And it seems the more I share it, the more I'm asked to share it. And if I can just get a few more people to become a part of this industry or want to be involved, then I've achieved my goal as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I mean, what's really exciting for me about you is that you don't come from the traditional background. You don't come from the family of sailors that, your dad was a captain, or you grew up in Fort Lauderdale or Australia, or, on the coast somewhere and surrounded by boats. You were smack dab in the middle of the USA, landlocked, and yachting was like the furthest thing from your mind. Now, it's not very often that a kid from the middle of the country manages to climb up the ranks and get themselves into a captain, let alone, even develop a love for yachting.
And no, not at all. I grew up the furthest thing from yachting, and you're right smack in the middle of America, on a farm in central Indiana. So I didn't even know as a youngster what a yacht was, what a motor yacht was, what a sailing yacht was, anything like that. I mean, the biggest body of water that we had was a small lake, and it was an hour and a half away from my mom's house. So I had no clue. So no, yachting was definitely not on my radar.
So how did it get on your radar?
Uh, so I ended up going to graduate school out in North Carolina. And it was a really odd path. I went from wanting to be a veterinarian and getting into vet school, being young and dumb and 22, and deciding not to go. And at that time, I had a bachelor's in chemistry, and said, well, if you're not going to go to vet school, what are you going to do with a bachelor's in chemistry? So it just made total and complete sense to go on and get a master's, right? So I went to a small school out on the coast, University of North Carolina, Wilmington. And when I got there, that's when I found the ocean. That's when I found boats. That's when I was like, oh, I don't have to shovel snow anymore. And it was really pretty cool. So it was totally by accident. Someone invited me to a party on a motor yacht, and I was intrigued from the start. I was intrigued, and you've heard me say this before, the parallels into the heavy equipment that I ran on the farm. Specifically the engine room. That's the first place that I wanted to see. And I looked around and I was like, these are tractor engines, And so immediately I've just always been drawn to heavy equipment and just watching the captain maneuver the boat and the hand-eye coordination. And I said, I want to learn how to do this. And I was fortunate enough and lucky enough to find somebody that took me under their wing and taught me everything. And it just really launched me forward. And I just ran with it. He says today, no, I provided you with the tools. You were the one that picked him up and ran with them.
Well, being a professor, being a chemistry major, or even being a veterinarian, they are all noble professions. That being said, what do you think yachting has given to you above and beyond what those amazing professions could have done?
Oh my gosh. It's funny. I'm on delivery right now, moving a boat from Sarasota, Florida to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And so that's a 2,000-mile run. And my mate and I were just talking about that last night and along the way, because our days are long. You can imagine we have plenty to talk about. And I love my job, number one. I mean, I roll out of bed at work, and I roll out of bed ready to go and loving what I do. Heck yeah, there's times that are stressful. But the yes, the places that we get to see and the fact that we're on the move and we get to meet new people, we get to see new scenery and the travel, that's definitely a lure. But it's probably for me more than anything, and we were talking about this, the relationships and the friendships that we make along the way. Um, we were talking about, we had a little bit of a break and we were home recently, and we were talking about how we were just there for a little while and we were like, okay, it's time to go. And then we were talking about how scattered literally all over the world we have friends. For you, example, I mean, and it's just the camaraderie that you have in this industry, and you can't pull into any port without knowing someone. And if you don't know someone, you're going to know someone. And if you need something, people are so willing to help you. It's just, it's probably the relationships, the friendships that you make in this industry that's really a huge thing for me. Obviously, yes, I love running boats, and yes, I love the travel, and yes, I love the challenge of what I get to learn. And as a captain, we were just having dinner last night after we got into port, and she says, and I was, you know, obviously we're on a delivery, and so our days are long. And yeah, I was looking at my phone, looking at my weather apps and my nav and stuff like that on my phone. And she asked me, she said, do you like that part of your job? And I was like, oh God, I love the weather part of it. So yeah, there's the technical aspect of it that I love as well. I mean, I love weather and I love navigation, but the relationships that you build in this industry and the links that people will go for you are they're just unreal.
Well, let me ask you, what would be, excuse me, the one biggest piece of advice that you would give to anybody that is thinking of entering yachting?
I struggle with two pieces of advice. And you know me, Ria, I have no shortage of words. So this is hard. You want me to nail it down to one? I've said it before and I'll say it again. You gotta have a mentor. You really do. You gotta have somebody that will help you along through this. Somebody that's there to push you when you need it. And maybe I say that from a different perspective. I hate to say that it's different being a female in the deck department, but it is. And having that mentor for me was huge, because there was days that um, I wanted to give up, because when I was younger, I was intimidated by some of those big boat captains, those guys on those big boats, and I didn't want to go ask them any questions, and they were scary, and those big boats were scary, and so having that push of, no, you go talk to them, or keep going, or yes, you can do this when you think you can't. Or even now, still having somebody that I can reach out to and say, well, what do you think about doing this, or that, and having that person that will say that's a great idea, or no, what the hell are you thinking? It's a dumb idea. That's really huge. Having that support system, I think.
Do you know what, Kelly? I want to say thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks for always giving me the opportunity to really share what I love about this industry, and just giving me a platform really to. I really am passionate about more women joining the deck department in this industry, but just anybody in general really reaching for a goal that they may have that might seem a little bit unobtainable. Because I never would have thought from Central Indiana that I'd be doing this now. And I jump out of bed every single day loving my job. So thank you so much for giving me this platform and allowing me to speak freely like you do.
Of course, anytime. Once again, from Indiana to delivery and captain, you've been listening to Captain Kelly Gordon right here on the PYA Crew Spotlight. My name is Ria. I have been your host. We'll see you again next time. Everyone, and welcome to another edition of PYA Crew Spotlight. My name is Ria. I am your host, and I'm very pleased to welcome Khara Pierre. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good, Ria. I'm good, thank you.
Now, let me ask you, what got you into yachting?
Well, it was actually a friend of mine. a yacht was being built in my hometown, and he had met the crew and he got invited on and he'd got offered a job. And 6 months down the line, he then said, Khara, this is life-changing. You need to do this. So then he helped me do my courses. And then luckily, as a greenie, I was taken on that yacht.
Nice. So it helps to have contacts then.
Yeah, it definitely does. It definitely does. But I'm not saying that would, you know, it wouldn't stop you getting a job if you didn't know people. But the contacts is always a great thing.
Now, how long were you actively in the industry?
In between like 12 and 14 years, you know, having a little bit of a respite in between that.
And what is your position on board?
A purser. So, but I've actually done every position in the interior. So I've had experience in all of it.
What was the hardest part of that job?
It's the unexpected changes that can happen within a second, you know, like say, for example, you can plan a whole itinerary to Canada. This is like a true story. Plan it, restaurants, you know, like, but do this big trip. And then all of a sudden it will be like, oh no, we want to go somewhere else. So then you have to do the whole thing again for another place. And, you know, you just got to be so used to the change and so used to adapting and dealing with pressure, you know, because people want it, things like that. You've got to be able to produce that for them.
What is a purser? Can you explain that to those out there that aren't aware or perhaps looking to get into the industry and want to know what a purser does?
Yeah, so a purser manages pretty much most of the administration on board. It's visas, accounts, crew travel. You know, you deal with all the administration, all the planning, logistics, port clearance, port control, and then you do the concierge side of things. So you deal with all the guests, their requests, where they want to go, and their logistics. So cars, you know, booking tours or whatever they like, really. So you're sort of at the top with the captain, and, you know, of course you liaise with the captain with all of it, but you are also the main coordinator and the person who should communicate all what is going on, so there's not a mess up, you know, down the line.
So I guess in relation to, you know, your friends and the other industries that they have gone to, how do you feel yachting enriched your life?
Oh, well, where do I start? Like the travel, the people you meet, the sort of situations you go through where you're like, I did that. It's hard, you know, there's hard aspects to it, but the sort of self-fulfillment and what you achieve is amazing. You grow as a person, you know, and I'm not going to lie, the money, like, I don't think I would have ever been able to buy a house without having yachting to help me with that, you know, like working in the UK is hard, like, you know, to get a good paid job. And yeah, it's been amazing. I've got friends for life, like best friends, and I've got a lot, and, you know, and all these people have helped me grow. And yeah, I can't begin to be like, the thankfulness I have for yachting is, yeah, it doesn't stop.
Well, what tips or bits of advice would you have for those that are considering taking that plunge and saying, you know what, I really do want to get into yachting? What would you tell them?
Right, so there's a process of getting into yachting, you know, it's really, really good, like we touched upon earlier, to know people in the industry, but then there's different platforms you're able to use, and it's just like straight off the bat, it's a really nice presented CV, you know, a very smart picture. Like, you can Google information on how to do a yachting CV, and I'm working with a recruitment company, and, you know, it's so important that first impression. Your CV it's the first impression for agents, and then it will be forwarded to the yachts. There's a lot of competition, so, you know, it's really taking the time in presenting yourself well, presenting your CV well, and you know, go to the locations. I know because of COVID, it's been a real nightmare for people, and it's a real shame because, you know, I can see the greenies trying to come in, and people do want to give green crew a chance, and but the travel restrictions have been difficult. But it is generally, without COVID, it's getting to those places like Antibes, like Fort Lauderdale, Palmer, and getting in the mix and meeting people. And, you know, it is all about first impressions. If you go to these sort of crew places in these areas, and, you know, you chat to people, you have an evening out with them, and it goes from there, you know. And as long as you carry yourself well, and you know, you're determined, I think, yeah, I think you'd be able to get on board a boat.
One question that I do want to ask you, however, is because you are now associated with a recruitment company, would you suggest those that are trying to get into the industry to be very, very careful about what they post up on their Facebook page?
Oh, do you know what? Absolutely. Like, I see it on groups and things like that. And, you know, it is, you put something on the internet and that's it, you know, it can't be taken away. And working with a recruitment company and seeing these sorts of posts, you know, negative, positive, like everyone's entitled to their own opinion. And even if it is arguing against something or someone, you can always do it in a very articulate way. But sometimes people just absolutely go on one, and yeah, you just got to be so careful what you put up on the internet. And I'd suggest to be careful with that, you know, like especially, you know, on your Facebook. And as a purser, you know, like we're looking at crew to employ, we go on people's Facebooks, you know, you're trying to understand a bit of what someone's like, you know, because you can only get so much from an email or a telephone call. But these social media platforms, you know, you're putting this out for the world to see. So you should really be careful, definitely.
Yes, well, that is something that I did want to address, because I've had people approach me as well talking about getting into the industry. And the first thing I do is I check out their Facebook pages and their Instagram. And there are times where, you know, the first response is you need to clean up your history.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Khara, it's been an absolute pleasure to host you here again today.
Yeah, do you know what? It's always lovely to chat to you, Ria. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, you've been listening to Khara, Pierre. This has been another episode of the PYA Crew Spotlight. My name is Ria. I have been your host. We'll see you again next week.